they want to be invited in. I do think, and I think just this a key thing for millennials, I do think they want to be a part of a church where their doubts and their questions are not immediately rejected and dismissed. If we claim, and I obviously believe we do, we claim to hold the truth of the universe, Jesus Christ, then I don't think their doubts and their questionings or their, can you explain, I don't know if I agree with, X theological statement. What does that mean? I think so oftentimes we've seen that as a sense of them detracting from the faith. Like, how dare you have doubts? And I think really for millennials, their doubts doesn't come from a place of hostility. It comes from a place of sincerity.
Hi, this is Mark Sopowitz with a Clarion Voice, and today we are pleased to have, for a second time, our guest, my pastor at the Legacy Church here in Atascadero, Pastor Garrett Kruse. Garrett, thank you for being with us. We appreciate that.
It's good. I'm sorry you couldn't book a more interesting guest, but good to be back, Mark. Good to see you.
Thank you very much, Garrett. The first thing I want to ask you about is that right now, in 2022, what is your biggest obstacle as a pastor as far as church, and everything that's going on? What is your biggest obstacle?
Starting with the easy ones, huh? I see. Just biggest obstacle. I think, with everything that the pandemic caused, well, obviously, there was division, there was policies, there was policies. Well, yeah, there was policies, there's politics. I think the biggest thing right now that we're still trying to wrestle with is trying to answer the question of who are our people. Because for the longest time, it was, hey, we'll see you on Sunday, and everything's, then you're part of the church. But I think with online church, which has been, I think, helpful and beneficial, of course, it's really kind of isolated people and disengaged people in a way where it's become uniquely challenging to figure out how to shepherd them, how to help them, how to, engage with them. And so that's something that we're just constantly working on, trying to strive just to figure out of like who moved out of California, right. who is just isolated and feeling alone and we're not seeing them physically face to face. And so how can we minister to them? How can we help them? How can we love them and serve them? I think that's just a huge challenge of just trying to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks. And if they have, how can we reach and pick them back up and get them connected again?
So what steps are you actually taking to be able to maintain, your attendance or increase it, or just basically discipling people? What are you doing to do that?
We've talked a lot as a staff at Legacy that, when shutdowns hit, we moved online. It's kind of like we became so content focused that like I said, kind of like care was like, hey, a quick text here, and then that was it. And so I really think kind of churches post-pandemic, post-COVID will really be defined by, my church is where I go, not just to get my content, but where I go to get my care, where I go to connect with people. And so, I mean, what we've been doing is literally going through our database. I mean, we've been like just literally person by person by person, just seeing where they're at, seeing how they're doing. So it's really kind of been just the work of God, increase our heart of compassion for our people, like kind of reignite our love for your community again. And it's really, it's nothing flashy or fancy. It's literally just been making phone calls. Okay, we have someone's address. Let's write them a letter. Let's see how they're doing. Let's see if so-and-so's heard from so-and-so. It's really just been kind of the boots on the ground of just making sure people know they're loved.
Has anybody come to you and asked you about content at the, for your sermons, or is there something that they want to hear? I mean, are they more wanting to hear the word as opposed to, a general sermon?
I think, 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 I I think the at least at Legacy, we've tried to really go back to the basics, go back to the essentials of kind of replanting the importance of the gospel, where in our nation we're fighting and arguing about so many things that are really secondary, and I think it's been really important for people to just either hear the gospel again, because sometimes we intellectually understand it. We could say what Jesus did, but it's sometimes that reminder of preaching the gospel to ourselves again. Of course, like beyond that, which is that's the most important thing. Of course, there's been a lot of talk about mental health, about people feeling stuck, feeling isolated, depression and anxiety over these last couple of years, and really reminding them of the saving work of Christ, and then with that the love of Jesus, that he's not finished with you yet, that where you're at right now, he's going to mold you, he's going to help you, and just reminding, like you were just preaching a couple days ago, that by the power of his Spirit we can move forward. We can, that how we feel today, how we feel stuck is not going to be our reality if we just trust in him and move forward. And so, yeah, of course, I think going back to the essentials of who Jesus is, what he's accomplished for us, and how that changes everything. And then kind of coupled with more kind of like a counseling mindset of just helping people specifically with how they're feeling relationally or how they're feeling mentally has really been kind of the biggest asks for people. Like, can you help me with these certain areas?
Okay. Do you find that sometimes what people are coming to you with, as far as problems are concerned, are beyond your scope of experience, and that you have to refer them to?
No, never. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That's in kind of Atascadero, just kind of good licensed Christian counselors, therapists, cognitive behavioral therapists. There's a few, and so I know just of a few kind of psychologists that I know personally. They're like, yes, we can see people, but in 2 months, just the need is so great. Right. And just kind of with my group of kind of pastors outside of my denomination, just kind of local Atascadero pastors, that's been something where we're training people up, we're helping, but we're sending them resources, but also, yeah, I mean, as a pastor, I do counseling, but I'm not a counselor. Sure. I'm normally like, okay, well, what does the Bible say about that? Cool.
Yes.
Do that, and then let me know when you've done it. When some people really need the time to sit, to have someone really listen to them and really give them that professional help. So yeah, it's a huge need, well beyond my level of education, my level of intelligence, my level of time. That people are hurting our community, and I know you know that well, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me throw something at you here, because I was doing a little research yesterday, and I saw that according to the Pew Research study that just took place in December, 29% of people that they surveyed do not have any religious affiliation. How do you address people like that who don't have a religious affiliation? I mean, you can't force people to, to come to church and whatever. Are you doing things to, besides what you were mentioning about actually calling them, and getting out your mailing list or what have you, and trying to get people that way? But what does that bother you, first of all, about the fact that nearly a third of people that are surveyed don't have any religious affiliation?
I mean, absolutely. It grieves me. It makes me sad, and I've had many conversations with just kind of friends and peers where it's a unique place where they're like, hey, we love you, and we love what you're doing. We're done with church. We're done with God. We're just kind of, and they've definitely walked away from the faith. I think a lot of that, and obviously there's spiritual warfare going on, to steal, kill, and destroy what God has planted in someone's heart. Of course, first and foremost, I think a lot of people that at least I've talked to have pain from the church, and so basically, if you really sit down like this and talk with them, their issues are not theological. Their issues are not with Jesus. It's not with the gospel. It's I grew up in church and I've had a really negative experience, or I've seen corruption in leadership. So therefore, they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. I'm just done with all of that. And it's such a commonly used word right now. But everyone is deconstructing. I think a lot of it has to do with, again, just kind of almost going back to counseling, that they have hurts, they have trauma, they have issues, not necessarily with God, but with the people that claim to follow him, And so I've had a lot of conversations just over the last year or so with people that used to go to church, used to be a part of the faith, and I have a relationship with them. I have a friendship with them, which is fantastic. But they've really stepped away from God. Again, not necessarily because of theological reasons. I think oftentimes it's because of secondary issues that we've just, held with a closed hand, and we've, or church has become so political that they're just like, I thought this was supposed to be, about the grace of God. I thought this supposed to be about Jesus and what the cross accomplishes for us. And so it's definitely, I don't think well, the simple answer is preaching Jesus to them again. Preaching Sure. Jesus, preaching the gospel. That's the answer. Sure. But I think the symptoms and really what caused that is really multifaceted. I don't believe it's as simple as like, well, they're just rejecting God. I think they need to hear the truth about God again. And I think churches moving forward really need to be marked by grace, by reminding people that no one is perfect, and showing that in their leadership, showing that authenticity, showing that willingness to say, hey, the pastor's like, I'm just a dude, like we're just women and men preaching the truth about God, but the only hero here is Jesus. It's not me, it's not you. And I think that willingness to say, hey, come as you are, and there's a seat at the table for you, and we're here to worship Jesus, and we're here to all heal together. I think that's going to get people back in churches as we just love them, preach the gospel to them again, and remind them that Jesus died for all of us.
Has the attendance gone down as a
Yes.
result of all of that's happening and all of, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, if we were like March to April of 2020, so a few years ago, like when we went from what is it, COVID? Oh, I've never heard of that. The coronavirus, to, hey, we're all shutting down for a few weeks. Yeah, I mean, I know just like church wide, we went from like 300 to 40. Like it was a drastic shift in numbers, because again, like I was saying, like just our people just scattered. There were some watching online. There were some that quickly, moved out of the area. There were some that just felt called to just like, we're gonna be a part of this now, or we're gonna just disengage from church because we're just so afraid of what's going on in our world. But yeah, I mean, just strictly numerically, we've changed in our numbers. And
How would you react if I told you that, and you probably already know this, but why should people be afraid of coming to church when they've already been given the gift of eternal life by believing in the Lord? There should not be any fear of death because he's already died on the cross and we have that promise of heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to, do you find that you were having a struggle trying to communicate that with people, or did you just let the chips fall as far as whether or not they came or not, or watched it online?
Yeah, I mean, yes, and amen to everything that you just said. There's like what we really tried to express was that the church is our people, and the church is not a building. The church is not a service. The church is the body of Christ, and trying to remind them of the importance of, yes, not neglecting the gathering of the saints, to making sure we're spending time together. But yeah, especially early on, that did look different. It did look like people engaging kind of in like digital small groups within the comment section, which was unique. And of course it was also supplemental, like for a season, this is good. And I think that's a unique challenge right now where people have become so accustomed to online, so accustomed to watching a service, which I think is great. It's a great on-ramp. It's an evangelistic opportunity, that your videos online reach a whole lot more people that are physically in this room right now, but I think so many people have just become accustomed to that's what church is. Like, no, church is you engaging in the kingdom of God, you serving, you getting a chance to know your brothers and sisters that you're going to spend eternity with. And of course, there's wisdom in like, with certain people of either certain age groups or certain levels of kind of health, and they have pre-existing conditions where they're just like, I don't feel comfortable physically gathering in a space right now. I would never, judge someone for that. But at the same time, I worry about when are we going to re-engage? If that was our reality, and so we want to pray for you, we want to make sure you're well, and if you're saying this is my decision, don't settle for isolation. Don't settle to just be like, I'm just going to stare at a screen and call that engaging with the body, because it's not. We know it's not the same thing. So it has been difficult, but I think especially now in our context, kind of in our little county, I think most people aren't going to push back when you're like, hey, it's time to come back to church. It's time to, we miss you. We miss seeing you. Why don't you join us on a Sunday? Plan a visit with us.
Right. Okay. Now, you and I talked recently about the issue of millennials, of which you are a part of.
Yeah. I'm a big part of the issue.
Okay. And so you're how old?
I'm 31, gonna be 32 in a couple weeks.
All right. So you're in that category.
I'm a millennial. I'm a 90s kid.
Yes. Okay. Well, the problem is that, at least from what I've seen, is that people are saying that millennials are leading the shift away from church. Are you trying to reach people in that age category to get them back into church, with content, with just, I agree with about preaching the basics, because that's what it's all about to begin with. So are you trying to specify anything that you do to that age group? Because I notice that people that are coming are younger for the most part. So are you trying to reach out to those people, or is it just because, they're wanting to come to a church and hear the gospel?
I think millennials are complex, and I think they're definitely misunderstood. And of course, coming from a millennial, of course, I'm going to say that. I think, obviously, when it comes, millennials grew up in the age of the internet and social media. Like, we're just, that's our native language. And so, yes, I think kind of my age group, it was very easy for us to be like, what? We'll be on Facebook? Sounds good. And you're like, oh, okay, you're going to be on YouTube? Sounds great. I'll add you to my list of subscribers. That was a shift. I think we kind of smiled at, like, yes, like this is great. And so, of course, with that, like I said, I think they really do need that reminder of that. Just like church is not a screen. Come be a part. This is great, but it is supplemental. I do think, kind of going back to what we were talking about with kind of the church hurts. I've just spoken to a lot of millennials that kind of, again, grew up with the age of social media and the internet. And I think a lot of us kind of first flocked to kind of mega churches, like the big, like 30, 40, 50,000 people, the churches that had, podcasts and YouTube accounts before everyone did. And I think they've seen, I think there's kind of been this, honestly, a very healthy crumbling of a lot of kind of key mega churches that were really marked by progress, even if it means hurting the saints. Let's grow big, even if it means that we aren't healthy. And so I think a lot of millennials, if we want to just speak uniquely, they really want to see a church and be a part of a church that really values character. Even maybe more than efficiency or even competency. They want to see, because they've seen the hypocrisy. They've seen how the church leadership structures can really idealize an individual instead of Jesus. and people get hurt because of that. They've seen that, that was me kind of growing up, like kind of flocking to these celebrity pastors, which I think should be an oxymoron, right? And then watching these kind of systems crumble, and then millennials seeing like, oh, that's not healthy. That's not the way of doing church. And I think if millennials are going to be coming back into church, or the millennials in churches, I really think they do want to see character. I think another thing that is, I think, unique is hopefully people are coming back into church. I think this has at least been my experience with my lead pastor, Pastor Rick Comstock. I think millennials kind of want to feel a sense of mutual investment. I think for the longest time, churches were like, hey, you come here and you just do the work I tell you to do. And what Pastor Rick did for me, which was just a huge miracle and a testament to, he just knows what he's doing. He's a fantastic pastor. There was this mutual sense of, you're investing in this church, yes, but I'm also going to invest in you. And that's why I'm a pastor today, because Pastor Rick invested in me. And I think millennials, and I know that, like you said, they're unique and they got their own fair share of just quirks and issues. I think they want to feel that sense of, hey, if you're going to invest in this church, let's partner together, and I want to invest in you as well. They want to feel that their leadership, their pastors really care for them, that relationships are so important to millennials. Of course, the way they express them is different. Don't call a millennial unannounced, text them first.
Right.
But they want to feel that sense of like, hey, as you're investing in this church, we're also going to invest in you, and we're going to give you a piece of ownership as we're building something great together. I don't know if that answered your question, but I think they're looking for that a place for them to serve and engage, and also a place that's authentic, that's really driven by character and honesty. And I think, for the pastor to be repenting and not just being the hero of all of his sermon illustrations, I think really is key for millennials to be like, oh, wow, this is really a place to go home.
Okay, what if I were to tell you that in a survey by Pew Research, they found out that more than 40% of millennials don't care, or they don't believe God exists?
More than 40% of millennials don't care or don't believe that God exists. I mean, I think, and I don't know the statistics, I'm sure Pew Research talks about it as well. I know that's millennials, and then I think Gen Z is like the most, like the generation after us, which is like my sister's generation. They're like the most unchurched, the most kind of atheistic generation that we've seen. I think just kind of going back to what we've talked about, I think a lot of them have disengaged from the church. I think that the days of, just speaking uniquely with the U.S., I think obviously there was a generation that was like, we're Christians because that's the American thing, and kind of that cultural Christianity, which I think a lot of that was just kind of an external displaying of a belief in God and not really having that internally. But yeah, I mean, millennials, like the next generation, they need the truth of Jesus. They are lost. I think tones from the church that comes across like, yeah, you lost millennials, that just makes them run away even faster. I think they want to be invited in. I do think, and I think just a key thing for millennials, I do think they want to be a part of a church where their doubts and their questions are not immediately rejected and dismissed. If we claim, and I obviously believe we do, we claim to hold the truth of the universe, Jesus Christ, then I don't think their doubts and their questionings, or their, can you explain? I don't know if I agree with, X theological statement. What does that mean? I think so oftentimes we've seen that as a sense of them detracting from the faith. Like, how dare you have doubts? And I think really for millennials, their doubts doesn't come from a place of hostility. It comes from a place of sincerity, that they really want to understand. And that really goes back to discipleship. That, churches, especially, again, just kind of that megachurch model was like, come and attend, but they weren't really discipled. And so a lot of them just genuinely have not really learned about kind of some tenets of the faith. And so they come sometimes, and people think like they're a nuisance, but like no, they're walking away because their questions aren't being answered, or they're walking away because their doubts are being dismissed, instead of saying, hey, you know what, let's sit down, let's talk. And so, of course, like it grieves me that would you say 40%?
More than 40%.
More than 40%. I think by and large, I think if we want to re-engage and have a revival with millennials, with Gen Z, and moving on, Gen A, those are my little kids. They're not too problematic just yet. I think welcoming them to like come and kick the tires of Christianity if you want to. We're going to tell you the truth, and we're not going to sugarcoat it, but we're going to tell you, and that your doubts and your questions and your concerns, Thomas had them too. And so like let's and again, I think understanding their heart is not so they can poke fun at Christianity. They really want to know. And I think for the longest time, they've been told to, hey, stop having questions and just pray more, instead of like, no, let's in community, let's discuss, because Jesus is greater than our doubts. And the truth that we hold is, and the beauty of faith is really something that we should be constantly growing in. So to, I guess, welcome their doubts and pointing them to Jesus, I think is really going to get them back.
Okay. I always like to do this with interviews, so I'll not make an exception in this case. But where do you see yourself as a pastor and the church in a year from now?
Where do I see myself? Where do I see the church a year from now? Wow, that's a great question. I hope that we can more and more build the muscle of loving and caring for our people. Okay. I think just really uniquely me personally, I think our church is healing and repenting and growing in so much with COVID. I think we still grieve for the church that was. We still grieve going back to pre-COVID, and that's not going to happen. We know that.
Right.
And I think for our church, in this year, and just thinking about 2023, to really ignite a sense of hope, of optimism, of vision, of let's not continue to be nostalgic and grieve the loss of what was. Let's embrace what is. Let's embrace the people that are here. Let's embrace the call of the Great Commission again. Let's build relationships again. I mean, we're still having, we'll have people come back to church that we just haven't seen, we haven't heard from. And I'm praying for more of that I know you asked uniquely for us, but I'm praying that over every church in our area.
Sure.
That they'll have new faces, that people coming back to church, and they would immediately feel loved and accepted and embraced, and like, come on, let's all follow Jesus together. Let's just take one step at a time. Just today, what is he going to do to mold us, to disciple us? We've talked kind of our theme as a church right now at Legacy is just, this is a year of progress. We've talked a lot that 2020 felt like a year of pruning, of God reminding us what the church wasn't and what we didn't need. And we all know, that makes sense. Just everything was taken away is what it felt like. It felt like 2021 was kind of this year of planting, like we talked about, like, what are the essentials? Because a lot of people are arguing about things that aren't essential. Let's talk about what the basics, like the tenets of our faith are, so that we can hold those dearly and follow Jesus. And so kind of for us, this year is a year of progress. We're going through the book of James, which is such a butt kicker. It's just such a fantastic book about, making sure that just the faith and works and hearing and doing. And so I'm hoping that we at Legacy can grow both in our maturity in the faith, and also just our love for one another, and that again, that we can move forward to new opportunities instead of, and I might be just preaching to myself, instead of just continually grieving, like, man, things used to be so much easier. Yeah, but I mean, if when you read the Bible, I feel like God's people have always been the underdogs. They've always had the odds against them. There's always been this remnant of people that God has protected and led and guided, to the promised land. And so, yeah, things are hard, and we've dealt with persecution, and people, like you said, like people are leaving the church and people don't want anything to do with God. I like those odds because, I think that's Jesus promised to build this church. There's no asterisk that said, oh, unless there's a pandemic, you know? And so I think reminding people of that, you know, that God's still got the whole world in his hands. He's going to see us through this. And so if we just don't give up on him, if we don't neglect, neglect to meet together, and if we, again, ask for God, mature us, disciple us, and also just increase our heart, we want to have your heart for your people in this community. Like you said, they are hurting. They are dealing with, depression and anxiety and isolation, and they have questions and they have doubts because we've all gone through a horrible thing. So it makes sense to be like, God, are you still there? Like, are you still good in these moments? And so I hope that the Church of Jesus can respond with a resounding yes. Yes, he's still here. Yes, he's still good. Yes, he still loves you. And come sit next to me this Sunday, That's what I hope for.
Speaking of that, Legacy Church meets on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock.
Yep.
And they are located at 5545 Ardilla Road. And if you would like to get in contact with Pastor Garrett, you can get in contact with him at 805-466-2626. And hopefully you'll take advantage of coming to a service and seeing for yourself. And Garrett, thank you very much for being here. We had a wonderful conversation.
Awesome, Mark. I
appreciate that. Thank you so much for gracing our chair for a second time.
These are nice. I might steal it.
In any case, once again, Legacy Church meets at 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings, and you could either sit outside or sit inside the sanctuary if you choose. And if you want to get in contact with Pastor Garrett, please call him at 805-466-2626, and he will get back to you as soon as possible. And once again, this is Mark Sobowitz from the Hub Studios with a Clarion Voice. Thank you.